Hello and welcome back to another video. Today we're going to be looking at how to paint these Bladeguard units. We have a Sergeant and then we have just another standard one. We're actually going to do both of them this time, and hopefully when we're done it's going to look something a little bit like this, maybe a tiny bit cleaner if we're lucky. But jumping right in, and first and foremost I do want to point out we've already done the bases on this. I have a whole separate video where I show off how to do it, but we just use this earth texture kind of sand from Vallejo. Very quick and easy, but it is just less of a pain if we do it before we apply the model. So that is already taken care of, and we are going to be using a few different colors here. First and foremost is this Wraithbone. Make sure we give it a good shake before we peek the microphone opening it. Hopefully not too badly. And as always, I'm using a horribly mangled brush here. It's not quite all reliable, but it is still, it's in quite a state. And making sure we just get it nice and wet before we apply any paint to it. We always want to make sure we're doing some very thin layers. And another important thing, as always, is just kind of maintaining how much paint is actually going onto our brush at any given time. Otherwise your paint's going to go on way too thick and it's going to start to look very chunky. And we're just going to very liberally start applying this all over. There's kind of a reason why we're putting this on areas that aren't going to end up this color. As you can see, our shield is going to end up primarily green, right? But we're going to be using kind of a dark green and going with Wraithbone over top of that, or underneath it rather. Does give it kind of a brighter end result, and that's something that we really want to focus on, is kind of brighter, more contrast tones in this compared to kind of your standard Dark Angel unit. This is actually the Deathwing color scheme. I've already done a video on Deathwing before, but that was with a proxy model. This is the official GW Bladeguard kit. And of course, you know, I will never talk down to anyone for using proxies. I think they're great. I think they're very much more cost effective compared to GW, excuse me. But the price tag on GW models makes up for the absolute just gorgeous kind of final result you can get. I think it's kind of unmatched in terms of quality. And I mean, there's some really good 3D printers out there, especially with resin. FDM, not so much. But even from what I've seen, the kind of top of the line printers always have some little defects to them when it comes to the final result, and you don't really have that problem with GW. So we're going to keep rocking with these official models. And as we kind of finish up our first layer here, you might notice it's a little bit patchy, a little bit splotchy. That's because it's a very bright color. It doesn't like to go on too well, especially not in one layer. So that's why we're doing our thinner layers. That way we can do a second or even third pass over without really having to worry about it too much. And you'll notice once we start putting on the darker colors, they go on much, much easier. And we do kind of want to be careful when we're applying those different layers, because if we end up getting any of it where we don't want it with this Wraithbone, it's going to be really hard to kind of go back over with a lighter color and fix. So this is a model where having smaller brushes kind of helps, and I do have a handful in my arsenal today. So once we kind of get to those smaller details, we will definitely be switching to those instead. But for now, while we're just doing our main kind of base layer, we don't have to worry too much about that. We can go kind of hog wild here. I've actually been playing a ton of Space Marine 2 recently, which I'm sure a lot of you guys have as well. And these guys actually show up in the multiplayer. You can get your model looking pretty close to these guys with a little bit of armor customization. Unfortunately, you can't really modify the color of your Talbirds or anything, but you can get pretty close with the rest of your color scheme. I think these guys are part of the Bulwark class. It's your standard sword and shield guys. I've been playing it a lot. I really like it. I think it's a very fun class. I've recently been trying to switch out to sniper, but it's not quite going as well for me. I tend to play the domination game mode, whatever it's called, like conquest or capture and control or something. You essentially just capture a flag that's moving around the map constantly, and these guys are great for that. Just being able to tank hit after hit with the shield is really kind of game changing. And we're applying this much faster than I did with our kind of test model I did in preparation for this. That guy took me quite a while, but we are flying through this, thankfully. And that's good. I don't really want to waste your guys' time, watching me very agonizingly slow paint over this wraith bone here. But we are chugging along pretty well, so it shouldn't be an issue. We won't finish everything in this part. This might actually be like a 2 or 3 part series, because there's just a lot of little details to do. We won't be doing much highlighting in this, I don't think. We might do a tiny little bit of dry brush highlights, but our primary focus is going to be on washes, especially getting that kind of finished overall look with the white, kind of off-white armor. It's essentially just going to be the Wraithbone with Agrek's Earthshade over it, which I'm learning to use a little bit better. I've been using washes on and off throughout some of our videos, and sometimes they don't look great, but I think I'm starting to finally get the hang of it. So hopefully that's something we can kind of continue on showcasing. I may have actually applied a little bit too much paint to our shield here, but that's okay. And just finish him up. Nice thing about doing 2 different models now is while one is drying, we can paint the other one. And we'll just kind of switch back and forth respectively as we go throughout. And just kind of doing a once over. Looks like that guy is nearly finished. What about you, my friend? There's a little bit more we can clean up, and then we'll get on to doing some of the kind of smaller details. Maybe we'll move on to the Talbert next. We'll just kind of see what I'm in the mood for. This guy's a little bit easier in terms of reaching the Talbert. Our other model, not so much. It's behind his shield, and I believe there's a holster in the way. So it's going to take a little bit of awkward camera angles to get in there, but we'll figure it out. We'll do some fancy maneuvering with our brush. Hope for the best. And just real quick, one more layer. We do want to make sure we get the back of the shield covered pretty solidly. I don't know if you could really see it from here, but I just left the back as that kind of bone color while we did white in the front. It's very difficult to kind of get very clean detail once your thing is applied, or all put together, rather. So if you do a sub-assembly, it's much easier to kind of paint the back of the shield properly, but I don't really have the dexterity required to do it while it's all together. Just something to think about. I like sub-assemblies sometimes, but I think in terms of, for this video, it's much kind of more consistent just to assemble it all first. And, we'll deal with the kind of problems that causes. Nothing too crazy, though. And looks like that little bit of his holster there, scabbard rather, for his sword we didn't quite get. And while we have a little bit of wet paint on, we will still just finish up our other model. Nothing too crazy, we just want to make sure it's all nice and finished. Otherwise, when you apply your wash, it's going to look kind of weird, and it doesn't help to have a patchy base coat. And I wasn't too great on getting the shield here. We'll just rectify that real quickly. Already starting with the awkward angles. It's fine though. Everything is fine. and just a little bit more. You can see where I use the, what do you call them, like nippers, to cut it off the sprue there. It really doesn't like to be painted over if you don't sand it down properly, and apparently I didn't do it well enough, so that's why it looks a little bit awkward. But it's fine. I'm sure once we've fully painted this, it'll look more normal. And now we're going to be switching our brushes up a little bit. We are going to move ahead to our second color here, and this is probably going to be for the Talbards. This is Caliban Green. If I can avoid peaking the audio opening and closing these paint pots. Perfect. Give it a nice little shake, as always. Caliban Green. And open that up. We're actually be switching to our other brush here. This is actually a Citadel starter brush. If you buy any of the starting paint kit things, you get one of those in there. So I figured it'd be nice to use that. I figure at least some of you guys will have picked that up and we'll be using this. And as always, a little bit of water on our brush. We'll get our Caliban Green onto our palette here. Perfect consistency. Not too thick, not too thin, but we will get a little bit less on our brush there. We want to keep it kind of controlled. And this is actually still drying, so we'll do this guy first. This is where the awkward angles are going to come in. We just want to get that Talbard down there kind of as best as we can. Hopefully avoid getting it on any of that armor we just painted. Otherwise we'll have to go right back over it. And I don't know if you can see it too well, but it does kind of go further up there. It is heavily blocked by that shield though. And we'll do the same thing on the other side. And then the other little bit we want to get in the front here is kind of that middle, right underneath the chest plate. That is also part of the Talbard. This isn't going to look nearly as neat, but it's fine. We can go back over and fix anything we need to. And actually it doesn't look too bad. That belt is going to be painted a different color, so it's fine that we went over that white a little bit. And we can't really see much else on the front there. We do want to make sure we get the back though. Otherwise it's going to stick out horribly once we're finished. And get as high up as we can there. Perfect. And we'll take one last little look here, make sure we just got all of it. You'll notice that with the undercoat of it being white, it does come off much lighter than it usually is, compared to, we'll say, this little Gravis Captain model. It is highlighted a little bit, but you can see that kind of the difference there in the tone, the shade, I guess. So just something to think about. You don't have to base coat that little area with the Wraithbone, but it does kind of help with the final product. So just something to consider. And moving on to this guy, we're going to do the exact same thing. There is a bit of a holster in the way though, so we're going to maneuver around that as best as we can. And let's get a little bit more paint on our palette, just so we don't run out here. Perfect. And we'll do the back first, and then we'll do the kind of stomach. Perfect. With the, oh, I got it on the leg. That's gonna suck. It's fine. We'll fix it. With the Space Marine 2 customization, you can change all of the armor color-wise, but you can't change the Talbards. They're just like a basic bone white kind of color, and it's fine if you're doing like standard Dark Angels colors. If you're doing like the inverse of this, where it's dark, or if it's green armor and white Talbard, but you can't really do the Deathwing color scheme too well, which isn't fine, but it's all right. We'll power through. We're also going to move on to this shield here. Don't worry about being not too clean with this. We are going to be doing the outer edge of the shield with a different color anyway. So just kind of do that inside of I don't know what you want to call that, the cross, I guess, as best as you can here. We will kind of avoid those oath papers. What do you call those again? I forget. But we'll avoid them as best as we can. We just want to keep them at kind of a lighter color. And we'll actually be using a contrast paint on those very shortly. Maybe in this part, maybe in the next one. I'm not too sure, but it'll be a fun little thing to do. We just want to make sure that they stay a bright color. That way it looks better once we get around to it. And some more paint on our palette. We'll move on to this guy's shield while the other one dries. And same thing. We're just going to go in here very sloppily as best we can. Just get full coverage on everything that isn't the edge or that kind of inside. Perfect. And we'll probably do a second pass over on both of these guys, but for now we'll let that dry. If you really want to get fancy with it, you can also do the inside of the shield the same way, but again, unless you're doing a sub-assembly, it's going to be kind of a pain to do that, so I'm not going to worry about it right now. And it's one of the nice things where it's kind of in a part of your model where it's not very obvious, so no one's really going to see it, which kind of comes with the territory of not being able to paint it too well. So, you know, swings and roundabouts, but that's fine. We'll deal with it as we kind of chug along here. And there's just that awkward little corner up there that does not want to get paint on it. Perfect. And actually I missed a tiny little part between these scrolls. It's fine. You'll also notice this guy has a little plasma gun. I will have tons of fun painting that. I really like doing the dry brushing effects. And if you've seen my Redemptor Dreadnought video, you'll know that we do a couple of different dry brushes, and hopefully it'll give us a good glow effect. I have seen recently a couple of different ways to paint the kind of plasma weapons. One of them, some guy was just painting them silver, and their excuse was it was just powered down, which you know, it's like the lazy way to do it, but you know, it's kind of funny. It's a good reasoning though. You know, my gun's turned off. Don't have to paint it that way. Maybe I'll use that excuse in the future at some point, but I have fun painting them, so it's not something that really bothers me too much. And we'll go over that Talbot just a little bit more, make sure we get some good coverage on it. Same thing with this guy. Now with the Wraithbone underneath, it does kind of give you some natural highlighting going on, so we don't want to, you know, go over that too much, but just make sure it's firmly covering everything you intend to cover there. Perfect. And now we're going to move on to probably our last little bit of detailing in this video, and then we'll cut it and we'll finish it up kind of next time. We're going to be moving on to probably our Balthazar Gold, I think. Yes. Now, if you know from any of my past videos, I'm a big Ultramarines fan. I have a Ultramarines army, and for the longest time, I really slept on Balthazar Gold. I always went Retributive Armor instead. I think both are great colors, but when you look at them, you know, separately, Balthazar Gold looks more like a kind of like rusty, like bronze, but on its own, it's actually a very nice color. So I've kind of made the switch to using this exclusively, pretty much. But if you do want kind of a more yellowish gold, Retributor Armor is kind of the move for that. I just happen to like this color a little bit more for Dark Angels. And we're going to do his Iron Halo here, I think is what this is called. The scabbard on his sword, or the tip of his scabbard, rather. And don't worry too much about getting it on the bone there. The whole thing is going to be painted with dryad bark anyway, so it's fine. And we're going to move on to the kind of inside of this cross thing here. See, I already am making a mess of it. That's fine. In between episodes, I'll do some cleanup. I had the exact same thing happen when I was doing the the main model, so don't worry about it. Everything's fine. And we just don't want to push too hard there while we're doing kind of the raised up edges. It'll give us a kind of natural, it's kind of like edge highlighting, I guess is what I'm trying to say. Anytime you have a recess, as long as you don't push down too hard, you'll kind of avoid getting paint on it when there is a raised edge above it. And I kind of butchered it, but it's fine. And I think we're going to need a smaller brush to get in there on the, I don't know what you call that, the skull thing in the middle. So we'll move on to our other model here. And we'll do the exact same thing on this side. Perfect. I'm going to be a little bit careful not to get that bottom little holder thing there. I'm going to keep that as a bone color, but we will get the rest of this iron halo. And perfect. Don't worry about making any mistakes. As long as you're doing thin layers, it's very easily fixable. You just really want to keep control on basically how much paint you're applying. Otherwise, you're going to start building up very quickly, and your paint's going to look real rough and bumpy when you're finished. Speaking of which, we'll get more paint on the palette here, and we'll do the exact same thing. This scabbard. And I got to go at like 12 different camera angles just to get all of it here, but that's fine. Perfect. And again, the inside of this cross with the skulls. See if I can't do it a little bit better. We'll actually use the kind of back of our brush to do some of these edges. And you can see it's a little bit cleaner. That one has a little paper on it, so it's going to be a bit more annoying to do, but it's fine. And the inside is much quicker. And I just butchered it along the side there, but that's fine. That's what I get for using a bigger brush than I did the first time I tried this, so it's alright. We'll roll with the punches. And again, I'll just take care of all of the cleanup kind of off camera, save you guys time, because otherwise it's going to be like 12 hours worth of painting. We don't really want that. One more thing we do want to get though is kind of the edge of this holster. You want to be a little bit careful with it, and I just got it on the Talbert, so ignore my advice. Do as I say, not as I do type of thing. But we will get every face we can kind of see here on all, 4 sides there. And there's still some little details that I'll take care of, like his little cross on his arm there. Other than that, though, this is probably going to be the end of part 1. Again, I will clean these guys up in between our episodes, and eventually we will get something much closer to kind of our finished product here, which is this little guy. I just want to shout out real quickly, I do have a Patreon, link is in the description. If you like these videos and you want to support the channel and see more, just maybe consider giving that a look. Otherwise, I would appreciate any times you guys like and subscribe. It helps my channel grow a ton. And same thing with comments, but I just kind of like engaging with you guys, so that's the reason I like those. Other than that, though, that is going to be the end of this video. Join me next time when we finish these guys up, and hopefully I will see you there.